The world had changed since the gates appeared, unleashing monsters upon humanity and awakening supernatural abilities in a chosen few. Among them stood Sung Jinwoo, once the weakest E-rank hunter, now a shadow monarch whose power defied comprehension. Yet even he had never faced an enemy like this, a melody that unraveled existence itself. The air in the abandoned concert hall hummed with an eerie resonance as Jinwoo stepped through the shattered remnants of the entrance, his boots crunching over broken glass. Shadows coiled around him like living tendrils, his army of spectral warriors lurking just beyond the veil of reality. He had come here on a Hunter Association request, investigating reports of a dungeon unlike any other, one where people vanished without a trace, leaving only the faint echo of a song behind. A soft, haunting tune drifted through the cavernous space, weaving between the rows of decaying seats. Jinwoo's instinct screamed at him to retreat, but he clenched his fists and pressed forward. The melody grew louder, twisting into a dissonant crescendo that made the very air tremble. Then, from the stage, a figure emerged, a slender woman clad in a flowing, ink-black gown, her fingers dancing over the strings of an ethereal violin. Her eyes, glowing with an otherworldly light, locked onto Jinwoo. "You shouldn't have come here, Shadow Monarch," she murmured, her voice harmonizing with the music. "This song was never meant for mortal ears." Jinwoo didn't answer. Instead, he lunged, his body blurring as he closed the distance in an instant. His dagger, Kamish's wrath, gleamed in the dim light as he aimed for her throat. But before the blade could connect, the violinist's bow swept across the strings, releasing a shimmering wave of sound. The force struck Jinwoo mid-air, sending him skidding backward as cracks spiderwebbed through the floor beneath him. He gritted his teeth, feeling the vibrations ripple through his bones. This wasn't just sound, it was a force that warped reality. Already, the edges of the hall seemed to flicker, as if the world itself were dissolving. His shadows writhed in response, surging forward to envelop the stage. The violinist merely smiled, her melody shifting into a faster, more aggressive tempo. The shadows recoiled, their forms distorting as the song unraveled their essence. Jinwoo's mind raced. If he couldn't rely on his army, he'd have to end this quickly. Channeling his mana, he activated Dominator's touch, his body radiating an aura of dark energy. He vanished again, reappearing behind the violinist with a devastating slash. This time, the blade found its mark, but instead of blood, black mist spilled from the wound, swirling into the air like ink in water. The violinist laughed, the sound harmonizing with her music. "You cannot kill a song, Shadow Monarch. I am the echo of forgotten souls, the dirge of lost worlds." She raised her bow, and the mist coalesced into spectral figures, dozens of them, their hollow eyes fixed on Jinwoo. They lunged, their movements synchronized with the melody, each strike carrying the weight of a collapsing reality. Jinwoo countered with ruler's authority, the ground erupting in spikes of darkness that impaled the specters. Yet for every one he destroyed, another took its place, their numbers swelling with every note. He could feel the strain on his mana, the edges of his vision darkening as the song seeped into his mind. Then, a realization struck him. The violinist wasn't just attacking him, she was rewriting the rules of the battlefield. If he wanted to win, he'd have to silence the song. With a roar, Jinwoo unleashed Shadow Exchange, swapping places with one of his distant shadows to gain a momentary reprieve. He focused, drawing upon the full might of his monarch's power. His body surged with energy, his form elongating as dark wings burst from his back, monarch's descent. The violinist's eyes widened as Jinwoo soared above her, his presence blotting out the remnants of the crumbling hall. He raised a hand, and the shadows answered, converging into a massive spear of pure darkness. With a final, decisive motion, he hurled it downward, not at the violinist, but at her violin. The instrument shattered with a deafening crack, the song fracturing into dissonant shrieks. The violinist screamed, her form flickering like a dying flame. "No. This cannot be." Her voice fragmented as the last notes faded, her body dissolving into motes of fading light. Silence fell. Jinwoo landed heavily, his wings retracting as the weight of the battle settled over him. The hall was nothing more than ruins now, the remnants of the song lingering like a ghostly whisper. He exhaled slowly, his breath misting in the cold air. This had been no ordinary dungeon, it was a warning. Something, or someone, was playing with forces beyond even his understanding. And if he didn't uncover the truth soon, the next song might erase more than just a battlefield. Jinwoo's breath came in sharp, controlled bursts as he faced the swirling distortion in the air, the song that unraveled reality itself. The melody pulsed like a living thing, warping the battlefield around them, bending light and shadow into impossible shapes. His instinct screamed at him to move, To act before the song's next note could rewrite the world entirely. Across from him, the figure responsible, cloaked in shifting harmonies, smiled, fingers dancing as if plucking the strings of existence. The first attack came without warning. A single, dissonant chord sliced through the air, and the ground beneath Jinwoo's feet liquefied, swallowing him whole. But he was already gone, shadows erupting beneath him as he launched himself skyward. His daggers flashed, carving through the distorted space where the melody had been. The enemy was faster, sidestepping with a laugh that echoed like a broken record. Jinwoo gritted his teeth. This wasn't just speed. The song was rewriting the rules of motion itself. He landed hard, rolling to absorb the impact, and immediately summoned his shadows. Legion soldiers surged forward, a tide of darkness against the warping sound waves. The enemy flicked a wrist, and the song twisted, turning Jinwoo's own shadows against him. The soldiers froze mid-strike, their forms unraveling into dissonant echoes. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed. If his shadows couldn't touch the enemy, he'd have to close the distance himself. With a burst of mana, he activated Ruler's authority, yanking himself forward like a bullet. The enemy's eyes widened, just for a fraction of a second, before Jinwoo's fist connected. The impact sent shockwaves through the battlefield, but the figure merely staggered, humming a low, resonant note. The air thickened, pressing down on Jinwoo like a physical weight. His muscles screamed as gravity itself intensified tenfold. He wouldn't break. Not here. Roaring, Jinwoo channeled every ounce of his strength into his legs, forcing himself upright. His bones creaked, his veins burned, but he refused to kneel. The enemy's smirk faltered. That was all the opening he needed. A surge of black energy erupted from Jinwoo's core, Dominion's reach. The oppressive pressure shattered like glass, and he lunged, daggers flashing in a relentless barrage. The enemy countered with a flurry of sound waves, each note a blade of its own. Steel clashed against melody, sparks flying with every collision. Jinwoo's arms ached, his reflexes pushed to their limit as he weaved between the deadly harmonies. One misstep, and the song would erase him. But Jinwoo wasn't just fighting, he was learning. He noticed the slight delay between notes, the way the enemy's fingers twitched before each attack. The song had a rhythm. And every rhythm could be broken. Feinting left, he baited the enemy into a high-pitched crescendo, then ducked low, driving his dagger upward. The blade grazed the enemy's shoulder, drawing first blood. A discordant shriek filled the air as reality itself stuttered. Jinwoo didn't let up. He pressed the advantage, his movements growing sharper, more precise. The enemy snarled, fingers flying in a desperate, frenzied composition. The battlefield twisted, time slowed, space fractured. Jinwoo felt his body being pulled apart, molecule by molecule. But he clenched his fists, summoning every shadow he had left. Enough, he growled. The shadows answered. A tidal wave of darkness erupted, swallowing the song whole. The enemy's melody choked, their control slipping. Jinwoo didn't hesitate. He crossed the distance in a single heartbeat, his dagger aimed straight for the heart. The enemy's eyes flashed with panic, then fury. With a final, desperate note, they unleashed a scream that shattered the sky. The world went white. Jinwoo felt the impact before he saw it, a force like a collapsing star, hurling him backward. His body skidded across the ruined battlefield, bones rattling. Blood trickled from his lips. But he forced himself up, his vision swimming. The enemy stood at the epicenter of the destruction, panting, their form flickering like a dying flame. Both were at their limits. Jinwoo grinned. Let's finish this. The final clash was a blur of motion and sound. Jinwoo's daggers met the enemy's song in a cataclysmic explosion of energy. Reality buckled. Time fractured. And in that split second, Jinwoo pushed past everything, pain, exhaustion, even logic itself. His blade found its mark. The song shattered. Silence fell. The enemy crumpled, their melody fading into nothingness. Jinwoo stood amidst the wreckage, his body trembling with exertion. He'd won. But as the dust settled, a single, haunting note lingered in the air. And Jinwoo realized, this wasn't over yet. The world trembled as Jinwoo stood face to face with the song that erases reality, its melody distorting the very fabric of existence around them. The air crackled with unstable energy, warping space into jagged fragments of light and shadow. His muscles burned from exhaustion, his breath ragged, yet his grip on his daggers never faltered. The song pulsed, its notes vibrating through his bones, threatening to unravel his will. But Jinwoo had come too far to break now. Across the battlefield, the remnants of the hunter forces lay scattered, their strength drained by the song's relentless assault. Even Beru and Igris, his most loyal shadows, struggled to stand, their forms flickering like dying embers. The song wasn't just an enemy, it was oblivion given form, a force that consumed memories, hope, and reality itself. Jinwoo clenched his teeth. If he fell here, everything would be undone. With a roar, he surged forward, his daggers carving arcs of black energy through the air. The song retaliated, its melody twisting into a piercing shriek that sent fissures racing across the ground. Jinwoo's vision blurred as the sound drilled into his skull, but he forced himself onward, each step a battle against the crushing weight of the song's power. His shadows rallied behind him, their attacks buying him fractions of a second, but they were being erased one by one, their forms dissolving into nothingness. Then, pain. A dissonant chord struck him like a physical blow, sending him skidding backward. Blood trickled from his ears, his body screaming in protest. The song loomed over him, its melody shifting into something mocking, triumphant. For a heartbeat, doubt crept in. Was this it? Had he finally met something he couldn't overcome? But then he remembered, his soldiers, his family, the countless lives depending on him. The system had made him strong, but his will was his own. He wouldn't let it end like this. With a final, desperate act, Jinwoo reached deep into the core of his power, beyond the limits he'd ever pushed before. His shadows surged back to life, not as separate entities, but as extensions of his own soul. The boundary between him and his army blurred, their strength becoming his resolve becoming theirs. The song's melody faltered for the first time, its perfect harmony disrupted by the sheer force of Jinwoo's defiance. He moved. Faster than thought, faster than sound, his daggers plunged into the heart of the song. Reality itself seemed to hold its breath as the two forces clashed, creation against annihilation, will against entropy. The explosion of energy sent shockwaves rippling across dimensions, tearing holes in the sky. For an eternal moment, it was unclear who would prevail. Then, silence. The song shattered, its melody fracturing into dying echoes before vanishing entirely. The world stitched itself back together, the distortions fading like a bad dream. Jinwoo collapsed to his knees, his body spent, but his heart pounding with victory. Around him, his shadows slowly reformed, their loyalty unwavering even in the face of oblivion. The aftermath was quiet, solemn. The threat was gone, but the cost was evident. Cities lay in ruins, memories lost to the song's influence, and the Hunter Association would need years to recover. But they would recover. Jinwoo had ensured that much. As he stood, surveying the broken horizon, he realized something had shifted, not just in the world, but within himself. He had faced the end of everything and refused to yield. And in doing so, he had rewritten what it meant to be the Shadow Monarch. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear, Jinwoo would never stop moving forward. Because the fight wasn't over, it had only just begun.